I never expected to be treated like royalty at my wife's sister's wedding, but I also never expected to be treated like a ghost. Weddings are supposed to be about love, family, and celebration. That's what I thought as I adjusted my tie in the mirror of the hotel room, getting ready for what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. I wasn't just another guest at this wedding, I was family. I had been married to Rose for 5 years. 5 years of showing up for every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering where I smiled, nodded, and played the role of the good husband. 5 years of making small talk with her father, who never quite knew what to say to me, and her mother, who always managed to find a way to make me feel like I was standing on the outside looking in. But today was different. Today was supposed to be a celebration where I was, without a doubt, part of the family. That's what I told myself as I walked into the grand ballroom, my shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. The venue was extravagant, the kind of place that screamed, no expense spared. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling, and long white drapes framed the tall windows overlooking a breathtaking garden. Every table was dressed in fine linen, decorated with fresh flowers, and set with polished silverware. I made my way toward the seating chart, expecting to see my name listed next to Rose's at the family table. That was the logical place for me, wasn't it? Right there beside my wife, celebrating her sister's big day. I scanned the elegant calligraphy on the chart, my eyes flicking across each neatly printed name, moving faster when I couldn't find mine. Maybe there was a mistake. I checked again, and again. My name wasn't there. A strange sensation prickled at the back of my neck, a slow-growing unease. I frowned, glancing around. One of the wedding planners stood nearby, adjusting the placement of a centerpiece. She was young, probably a college student hired to help out for the night, and when she saw me staring at the seating chart, she gave me an apologetic smile. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice light. "I think my name might have been left off the list. I'm the groom's brother-in-law, Rose's husband." I expected her to double-check, maybe reassure me that it was a simple mistake. Instead, she hesitated, her smile turning awkward. "Oh, right." I didn't like that reaction. She looked at her clipboard, flipping through pages before finally nodding. "You're at table 24. Table 24. That sounded fine, until I noticed something strange. The numbering of the tables inside the grand ballroom stopped at table 23. I blinked. Where exactly is table 24? She hesitated again. Then she motioned toward the entrance of the ballroom, the exact opposite direction of where I expected to be. I followed her gesture, my gaze landing on a small, isolated table placed right outside the main reception area. A table tucked away in a corner near the coat rack, far from the beautifully decorated hall where everyone else would be dining, laughing, and toasting. For a second, I thought I was seeing things. My stomach tightened. "That's my table?" The planner winced. "I just follow the chart." A sharp laugh escaped me, disbelief washing over me in waves. This had to be a mistake, some kind of mix-up. There was no way my wife, my own wife, had placed me outside the reception like I was an afterthought. I turned toward the crowd, my eyes searching until I found her. Rose, my beautiful, polished, charming wife, standing near the wedding party, laughing at something her sister had said. She looked radiant in her fitted dress, her hair styled to perfection, her posture effortlessly graceful. She was basking in the glow of the event, surrounded by people who adored her. And then she saw me. She met my gaze, her lips twitching into a smirk. I started walking toward her, weaving through the guests, my mind still trying to rationalize what I had just seen. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe. She spoke before I could. "Only close family gets a table," she said, her voice laced with amusement, like she was telling me an inside joke. It took me a moment to process her words. "Only close family." I stared at her, waiting for some indication that she was joking, that she would roll her eyes and say, "Relax, I'm kidding." But she didn't. She just stood there, watching me, waiting for my reaction. And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. Rose had done this on purpose. I exhaled slowly, a tightness building in my chest. My fingers curled into my palm, not in anger, but in something colder, something heavier. I turned back to the lonely table by the coat rack. A table meant for people who didn't belong. That was where my wife had placed me, away from the celebration, away from her. And for the first time, I realized something I had ignored for too long. Maybe Rose never truly saw me as family. Maybe I had spent 5 years believing I was part of something that never really included me. Maybe I had been blind. And now, standing there in that beautifully decorated ballroom, surrounded by laughter and celebration, I felt something unexpected. I felt done. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. Before I could even process my wife's words, before I could fully absorb the cold, sharp reality of what had just happened, I felt a presence beside me. A presence I had come to recognize over the years. My mother-in-law, Janet. She had the same smirk as Rose. That same thin-lipped expression of quiet amusement. Her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around a champagne flute as she surveyed me like I was an oddity, something out of place. "Guess you don't count," she said, her voice light and airy, as if she were commenting on the weather instead of casually reducing me to a nonentity. Then, she giggled. It was a soft, delighted sound, but to me, it felt like nails dragging across a chalkboard. I turned to look at her fully. She was dressed in a deep emerald gown, her jewelry gleaming under the chandelier light, her hair styled to perfection. She looked every bit the wealthy, elegant matriarch that she so desperately wanted to be perceived as. And yet, standing there, smirking at me as if I were some kind of amusing inconvenience, all I could see was the woman who had never truly accepted me. Over the years, Janet had made it clear in 1,000 subtle ways that I wasn't her kind of person. I wasn't from an elite family. I didn't come from money. I wasn't someone she could brag about at her social clubs. And now, she had found a new way to remind me of that fact. I glanced at Rose, waiting for her to say something, anything, to contradict her mother. But she just stood there, sipping her champagne, watching the exchange like it was an entertaining scene from a movie. She was enjoying this. They had planned this together. I clenched my jaw, inhaling deeply through my nose as the realization settled deep in my gut. I had always known that Janet didn't care for me, but I had fooled myself into believing that Rose was different. That no matter how much tension existed between me and her mother, at the very least, Rose would stand by me. But here she was, laughing at my humiliation. Something inside me hardened. "Wow," I said, keeping my voice low and measured. "You really went all out with this, huh?" Janet lifted her brow. "I have no idea what you mean." I let out a dry laugh. "Sure you don't." The giggle returned. She took a dainty sip of her champagne, looking incredibly pleased with herself. This wasn't just about the seating arrangement. This was a power move. A statement. A reminder that I was less in their eyes. I could feel the heat of nearby gazes, subtle but present. People were watching. The wedding guests might have been occupied with drinks and music, but there were always eyes. Always whispers. And Janet? She lived for moments like this. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "You really shouldn't take it personally." I turned my head slightly, locking eyes with her. "You mean I shouldn't take it personally that my wife and mother-in-law shoved me into a dark corner of the reception like some kind of unwanted plus one?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. Janet shrugged, a slow, deliberate movement. We had to make space for family. Family. That word sat between us like an invisible knife. I felt a slow, simmering rage begin to take root in my chest. Family. The word they threw around like it meant something sacred. The word they used when it was convenient for them, when it made for good appearances, when it benefited their narrative. I had been married to Rose for 5 years. I had attended every tedious family event, smiled through every backhanded comment, tried my best to be what they wanted. And now, at the very event where I should have been standing beside my wife, I was being told I wasn't family. I clenched my fist at my side, swallowing down the sharp sting of betrayal. Rose, who still hadn't said a word, finally spoke. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said, her tone dismissive. "It's just seating. Don't be dramatic." I turned to her, searching her face for something. Regret, guilt, anything that might indicate that she actually cared about how I was feeling. But there was nothing. No remorse. No hesitation. Just that same detached amusement. A slow realization began to creep over me. This wasn't just a one-time thing. This wasn't an isolated event. This was who she was. Who she had always been. I just hadn't seen it clearly until now. A sharp clink of glass drew my attention, and I glanced over to see Janet raising her champagne flute slightly, watching me over the rim with a smirk that practically dripped with satisfaction. She had won. She had spent 5 years making sure I knew my place, and now, with one calculated move, she had solidified it. I was nothing to them, a convenient afterthought, an outsider. I exhaled slowly, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Fine. If that was how they wanted to play it, then so be it. But they were going to learn something about me tonight. I wasn't the type to stay quiet and accept disrespect. I wasn't the type to let people walk all over me. And I sure as hell wasn't going to sit at that lonely little table by the coat rack and pretend everything was fine. I glanced down at my hands, at the wedding gift I had carefully picked out, the one I had spent weeks choosing because I wanted it to be perfect. A thoughtful, meaningful gesture for a family that clearly didn't see me as one of their own. Why should I leave it for them? Why should I give anything to people who had spent years giving me nothing but contempt? I tightened my grip on the box, my mind already made up. I wasn't going to sit through this wedding, pretending that I was okay with being treated like this. I wasn't going to let Rose smirk her way through my humiliation. I was done. I turned to her, my voice calm but firm. Then I'm leaving. The smirk vanished from her lips instantly. Wait. But I was already moving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, unapologetically in control. I clenched my jaw, my gaze flickering to the grand ballroom, where laughter and music filled the air. Inside, people were clinking glasses, celebrating. But out here, I was discarded like an afterthought. For a long moment, I just stood there, gripping the wedding gift in my hands, feeling the weight of everything settle onto my chest. The betrayal, the humiliation, the quiet, insidious disrespect that had been brewing for years but had finally reached its boiling point. The truth was, I should have seen this coming. This wasn't just about the wedding. This wasn't an isolated event. It was a pattern, a carefully woven tapestry of dismissals, condescension, and casual cruelty. From the very beginning, I had been treated like an accessory to my wife's life, a necessary addition for social appearances, but never truly included, never valued. And I had accepted it. I had let it happen, because I had convinced myself that love was about compromise, that marriage meant overlooking the flaws, pushing through the difficult moments, proving myself worthy of their acceptance. But now, I saw the truth with crystal clarity. They never planned to accept me. I was never going to be good enough in their eyes. And maybe, just maybe, I had spent far too long trying to be. I glanced down at the wedding gift in my hands, the box carefully wrapped with a ribbon I had tied myself that morning. I had agonized over this gift, wanting it to be perfect. I had spent weeks searching, debating, wondering what would bring real joy to the newlyweds. It wasn't just an item. It was a symbol of effort, of thoughtfulness, of genuine care. And yet, the people this gift was meant for hadn't even thought twice about where I belonged tonight. They had made it very clear, I wasn't family. So why should I leave them a gift? A slow breath left my lips as the decision formed in my mind, solid and unwavering. I wasn't staying. I wasn't going to sit at some pathetic table by the coat rack while my wife and her family laughed at my expense. I wasn't going to plaster on a fake smile, pretend everything was fine, and allow them to keep treating me like I was disposable. I tightened my grip on the box, my pulse steady, calm. Then, without hesitation, I turned to Rose. Then I'm leaving. The smirk vanished from her lips instantly. Her posture stiffened, her fingers tightening around the stem of her champagne glass as she blinked at me, like she hadn't quite heard me right. What? I met her gaze, unwavering. I said I'm leaving. Her expression flickered, a quick flash of panic before she schooled it back into something more controlled. She let out a sharp breath, rolling her eyes. Oh, come on, Alex. You're being ridiculous. Ridiculous. I almost laughed. I wasn't the one who had deliberately placed my own husband outside the wedding reception like an unwanted guest. I wasn't the one who had smirked when my mother mocked me. I wasn't the one who had made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that I wasn't a part of this family. And yet, I was the one being ridiculous. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. No, Rose. What's ridiculous is thinking I'd sit through this after what you just did. She scoffed, shifting her weight onto one foot, her expression slipping into something vaguely annoyed. It's just a table, Alex. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I repeated, letting the words settle between us. So if it's not a big deal, why did you go out of your way to make sure I wasn't sitting with you? She hesitated. It was only for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. The tiniest pause, the briefest flicker of discomfort. Because she knew. She knew. I didn't give her a chance to recover. You did this on purpose, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. You and your mother. Her expression twisted. Oh my God, Alex, not everything is some big conspiracy. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Then why are you smiling while I stand here humiliated? That did it. The smile vanished completely, her lips pressing into a thin, tight line. Look, she said, exhaling sharply, like she was losing patience. This is my sister's wedding. Not everything is about you. I tilted my head slightly, considering her words. Then, I glanced down at the wedding gift still in my hands. Yeah, I murmured. Not everything is about me. With that, I turned, walking away from her. Wait. Where are you going? She called after me, the first hint of real urgency creeping into her tone. I didn't answer. I walked past the ballroom entrance, past the guests who were too caught up in their own conversations to notice the drama unfolding. I walked straight to the gift table, where a beautifully arranged pile of presents sat, wrapped in glossy paper and delicate bows. And then, with a calm, deliberate motion, I picked up my own gift and slid it right back into my jacket. Rose gasped. Alex, don't. I turned back to her, meeting her wide-eyed gaze. Why not? Her mouth opened, then closed. Because she knew she had no good answer. Why should I leave a gift for people who didn't even consider me family? Why should I continue giving to those who never gave me even the smallest ounce of respect? The answer was simple. I shouldn't. I looked at her one last time, taking in the sheer disbelief on her face, the way her hands twitched at her sides like she wanted to reach for me, to stop me, to fix this before it unraveled any further. But it was too late. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about every moment before this, every quiet dismissal, every time she had let her family treat me like an outsider while she stood by, saying nothing. And I was done pretending it didn't matter. I turned on my heel and walked toward the exit. And this time, she didn't stop me. A hush fell over the nearby guests. The clinking of glasses, the laughter, the cheerful hum of conversation, it all seemed to dim as I turned toward the exit, the wedding gift tucked under my arm. I felt the weight of their eyes on me. I knew how this looked. The husband of the bride's sister, standing at the edge of the ballroom with a stiff jaw and a storm brewing behind his eyes. A man who was supposed to be part of the family but was, for some reason, walking away with a gift he had brought. Rose grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. What are you doing? She hissed, panic flashing in her eyes. I pulled away. Oh, I don't know, Rose. Maybe because I just realized I don't belong here. Janet scoffed from a few feet away, where she had been watching everything unfold with a smirk. Don't be dramatic. I turned to her, letting my voice drop to an ice-cold calm. You just told me I don't count. So why should my gift? That did it. Nearby guests were now openly staring. Some whispering. Some pretending not to listen, but failing miserably. Even the waitstaff paused slightly as they passed, their eyes darting between me, Rose, and her mother. I felt a sharp satisfaction settle in my chest. Good. Let them see. Let them witness this moment. Let them know. Because I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. Janet's smirk faltered, and for the first time that evening, she looked unsettled. Rose, on the other hand, was panicking. She knew I was serious. She knew that if I walked out now, the image of her perfect marriage would be shattered. Come on, she said through clenched teeth. You're embarrassing me. I let out a dry laugh. Embarrassing you? You made sure I was treated like an outsider at your sister's wedding. The tension in the air thickened. People were no longer just watching, they were waiting. Waiting to see what would happen next. And I decided I wasn't done yet. I turned to Janet, tilting my head slightly. Funny how Rose has been talking about how exhausting you are. How she only puts up with you to avoid drama. Yet here you are, making more of it. Janet's smile vanished. The color drained from her face so fast, it was almost comical. Rose let out a sharp breath. Alex, stop. But I wasn't going to stop. Because this had been brewing for years. And for the first time, I wasn't going to bite my tongue. I mean, come on. I continued, crossing my arms. What was it you said last week, Rose? I just have to tolerate Mom for a few more years until I can set boundaries. Silence. The ballroom had gone eerily quiet. Even the band had stopped playing. Janet turned sharply to Rose, her entire face twisted in dispel. She had no way out. No way to spin this. No way to charm her way through it. For years, she had played the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect sister. And now, in one night, it was all crumbling. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Janet, meanwhile, looked furious, livid, like a woman who had just realized the daughter she had controlled for so long had secretly resented her. After everything I've done for you, Janet spat, taking a step forward. Rose flinched. Janet's voice rose, her hands flying up in exasperation. I paid for your wedding. I covered half your mortgage. I lied to your father when you got fired last year. And this is how you talk about me. A murmur spread through the crowd. Guests exchanged glances. Whispers broke out. Rose's father, Harold, had been standing at the bar up until this point, nursing a whiskey and keeping himself out of the drama. But now he set his glass down and pinched the bridge of his nose like a man with a massive migraine. Clearly, this wasn't the first time Janet had gone nuclear. Rose, now caught between the fury of her mother and the judgment of an entire room full of guests, looked utterly lost. The groom had been quiet until now, but suddenly, Daniel, the man Rose's sister had just married, stepped closer, looking at his new wife with wide, slightly horrified eyes. Wait, you talk about your mom like that? That was the final nail in the coffin. Rose was trapped. If she denied it, she'd be calling me a liar. But if she admitted it, she'd lose her mother's support. She had no escape. I watched as she opened and closed her mouth, struggling for words. I watched as the perfect, delicate threads of the family image she had tried so hard to maintain began to fray. And I realized something. For years, she had let her mother treat me like I was less, like I wasn't worthy of a seat at the table. But tonight, she was the one who didn't belong. And me? I had never felt so completely in control. I exhaled slowly, glancing down at the wedding gift still tucked under my arm. This was over. The marriage? The charade? The endless cycle of playing along while they continued to push me aside? Done. I took a step back, letting the moment fully sink in, letting Rose feel the weight of everything unraveling around her. And then, just loud enough for only her to hear, I murmured, I was never the outsider, Rose. You were just too blind to see it. Her breath hitched. Her eyes glistened, panic flashing across her face. And me? I turned, walking away. Because for the first time in years, maybe ever, I wasn't chasing after her. I wasn't trying to fix things. I was letting her drown in the wreckage she had created. And it felt damn good. Rose was panicking now. She knew me. She knew that if I walked out now, the image of her perfect marriage would be shattered. I could see it in her eyes, that flicker of desperation, of realization. Up until this moment, she had been in control. She had orchestrated everything down to the finest detail, from the seating arrangement to the smug little comments that were meant to remind me of my place. But now, that control was slipping through her fingers like sand. Come on, she said through clenched teeth, forcing a smile for the onlookers. You're embarrassing me. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. Embarrassing you? You made sure I was treated like an outsider at your sister's wedding. The words landed hard. I saw the slight flinch in her expression, the way her lips pressed together. She knew she couldn't deny it. I took a slow step back, still gripping the wedding gift, watching as her panic grew. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about how this looked. Janet, still fuming from the bombshell I had just dropped about Rose's true feelings toward her, crossed her arms. Don't be so dramatic, Alex, she snapped. You're making a scene. A scene. Oh, suddenly, they cared about a scene. I tilted my head slightly, letting my gaze flicker to the growing number of guests who were already watching. News traveled fast at events like this. People who hadn't even been near us 5 minutes ago were suddenly whispering, shifting, glancing over their shoulders to see what was happening. The music was still playing, the drinks were still flowing, but the energy in the room had shifted. There was tension now, a sense that something real was happening in a room full of forced smiles and rehearsed pleasantries. And Rose? She felt it too. I could tell by the way she reached for me, her fingers wrapping around my wrist, not gently, not affectionately, but tightly, desperately. Alex, she whispered, her voice lower now. We can talk about this later. Just let it go for now. Let it go? My jaw tightened. That was her go-to move. That had always been her go-to move. When her mother made a comment about my modest upbringing. When her father barely acknowledged me at family events. When she let her family treat me like a stranger in my own marriage. Just let it go, Alex. For 5 years, I had let it go. But not tonight. I pulled my wrist free from her grasp. No, Rose, I said, my voice steady. I think I've let it go long enough. Her eyes widened slightly, a split-second crack in her composure. She knew. She knew this was different. I wasn't just annoyed. I wasn't just upset. I was done. And that terrified her. Alex, she tried again, softer this time. Please. This isn't the time. I let out a breath, shaking my head. When would be the time, Rose? When we get home, so you can smooth things over. Pretend like this never happened. She didn't answer, because we both knew that's exactly what she would have done. I turned to Janet, who was still watching with that smug, superior air about her, even though I could see the cracks forming beneath her carefully constructed facade. And then, before I could stop myself, I said, funny, isn't it? How Rose has spent years letting you treat me like I'm beneath her, all while complaining about you behind your back. Janet's expression darkened. Excuse me, she snapped, her voice sharp and clipped. I shrugged. Oh, don't act so surprised, Janet. You're not easy to deal with, and Rose has had plenty to say about you. Rose whirled on me, her voice low and seething. Alex, stop. But I wasn't stopping. Not anymore. I turned to Janet. In fact, last month, she told me she wished you'd stop interfering in our marriage. That she's just biding her time until she can finally set boundaries. Janet looked at Rose. The shift was instant. The fake warmth, the smug confidence, all of it vanished. Is that true? Janet demanded. Rose's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because there was no way out of this one. If she denied it, she'd be calling me a liar. If she admitted it, she'd lose her mother's support. And for someone like Rose, someone who had spent her entire life making sure she stayed on her mother's good side, that was devastating. I watched it happen in real time. Her carefully constructed world, her perfectly curated image, shattering. Guests were openly staring now. Bridesmaids, groomsmen, distant relatives. Everyone was watching as Rose floundered. And then, as if things couldn't get worse for her, the groom, Daniel, stepped forward. He looked at his new wife, Rose's sister, then back at Rose. His expression was unreadable, until he said, Wait, you talk about your mom like that. The tension in the room tripled, because now, it wasn't just Rose's reputation that was at stake. It was her entire family dynamic. Janet was staring at her daughter like she was a stranger. The guests were eating this up, exchanging whispers and glances, watching every expression shift like it was the greatest reality show of the year. And me? I just stood there, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Power. Control. For years, they had treated me like I didn't matter, like I wasn't part of their world. And now, in one single night, they were all feeling what it was like to be on the outside, to be humiliated, to have their perfect little world collapse around them. Rose turned back to me, her eyes wide, pleading. Alex, she whispered, please. I just smiled, because for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't the one begging. Janet turned sharply to Rose, her expression twisted with pure fury. Her voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a blade. After everything I've done for you? You ungrateful little brat. I had seen Janet angry before. Her cold disapproval when I first married Rose, her passive-aggressive digs at family dinners, the little ways she exerted control over everyone around her. But this was different. This was raw. Rose, for the first time in her life, looked truly afraid of her mother. Mom, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But Janet was just getting started. She stepped forward, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening around the stem of her champagne glass, like she wanted to crush it in her grip. Her voice rose, sharp and venomous. I paid for your wedding. I covered half your damn mortgage. I lied to your father when you got fired last year. And this is how you talk about me. The air in the ballroom grew thick with tension. A gasp rippled through the crowd. People were openly staring now. Even the servers, who had been busy clearing tables, had stopped what they were doing to watch the implosion of this perfect family. And Rose was drowning. Her carefully crafted image, perfect daughter, devoted wife, loving sister, was crumbling in front of everyone. Mom, please. No. Janet snapped, her face flushed red. I have sacrificed so much for you. And you repay me by talking about me like I'm some kind of burden? Rose's hands were trembling. Her eyes darted around, as if searching for an escape. as if she could somehow undo the last 5 minutes. But she couldn't, and I just stood there, watching, because for once, it wasn't me in the hot seat. For once, I wasn't the one being humiliated. I had spent years biting my tongue, swallowing my pride, sitting through dinners where Janet and Rose made me feel like an outsider. And now, they were the ones feeling it. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Harold, Rose's father, was rubbing his temples like a man who deeply regretted his life choices. The groom, Daniel, looked absolutely stunned. His new wife, Rose's sister, was watching with wide eyes, her hands clenching at the fabric of her dress. And me? I was just enjoying the fireworks. Because this was better than I ever could have planned. Janet kept going, unable to stop herself. And to think I was actually proud of you, she spat. I stood up for you. I defended you. And all this time, you were waiting for the day you could set boundaries. Rose flinched at her own words being thrown back at her. She knew she had no way out of this. If she fought back, it would only get worse. If she apologized, it would mean admitting she had lied to her mother for years. She was trapped. And I was free. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt completely, utterly free. I took a slow sip from my drink, letting the moment sink in. Janet's rant was far from over. I did everything for you, she shouted. And this is how you treat me. Rose's face was a mix of shock and humiliation. And then, the real meltdown began. Janet pivoted. Her anger, once solely focused on Rose, suddenly included me again. And you, she snapped, rounding on me. You just had to stir things up, didn't you? Couldn't let things be? Couldn't just sit at your table and keep your mouth shut? I raised an eyebrow, utterly unfazed. Oh, I don't know, Janet, I said casually. I guess I just didn't feel like being treated like garbage tonight. A sharp gasp came from someone in the crowd. Janet's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you've done, she seethed. Do you think this little stunt makes you look good? It just proves you were never part of this family. I smirked. Oh, trust me, Janet. I got the memo loud and clear. Rose was shaking her head now, tears welling in her eyes. Alex, stop. But I wasn't stopping. I had been quiet for too long. I had been humiliated for too long. And tonight was my turn. I took a slow step closer, lowering my voice just enough so only Rose and Janet could hear. You both spent years making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Like I wasn't part of your perfect little family. Janet scoffed, opening her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Save it, I said, voice calm. Because the truth is, you were never a real family. You were just a bunch of people pretending. And now, the truth is out for everyone to see. I gestured toward the crowd, toward the guests who had completely stopped pretending to mind their own business. Janet's face was red with rage. Rose was on the verge of tears. And me? I had never felt better. Janet's lip curled. You are pathetic, she spat. I chuckled. Says the woman whose daughter just got exposed in front of her entire family. Rose let out a soft gasp, like she couldn't believe I had just said that. But the truth hurt, didn't it? Janet took a step forward, pointing a sharp, accusing finger at me. I should have never let Rose marry you. I grinned. Finally, something we agree on. That was it. That was the kill shot. Because at that moment, something shifted in Rose's expression. The tears in her eyes weren't just from embarrassment anymore. They were from fear. Because for the first time ever, I didn't look like the one fighting to hold this marriage together. I looked like the one ready to walk away. Janet's jaw clenched so hard I thought she might snap a tooth. You are going to regret this, she hissed. I shrugged. Doubt it. Then, before she could say another word, I turned away. And this time, Rose didn't try to stop me. Janet didn't have a comeback. The guests? They just watched. Because they knew. This family had just imploded, and there was no going back. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I had finally won. The ballroom was deathly silent. You could almost hear the weight of it all, the gasps that had already been sucked out of the room, the held breaths of guests who had witnessed everything unravel before their eyes. And then, a new voice cut through the thick air. Wait a minute. It was Daniel, the groom, the man who had, up until now, been nothing more than a quiet bystander in his own wedding. He had been standing near the head table, watching everything unfold with a look of growing horror. But now he was fully stepping into the wreckage. He turned to his brand new wife, Rose's sister, his expression unreadable. You talk about your mom like that? The tension in the room shifted again, like a fresh wave of realization washing over the guests. Rose was already destroyed. But now, the spotlight had shifted. The bride, Rose's sister, looked stunned, like she had just been struck by lightning. Danny, wait, she started, but he wasn't looking at her. His focus was still on Rose, his mind racing. You could see it. All the little details coming together in his head. The lies. The manipulation. If Rose had been talking about her own mother like this, what else had she been saying? What else had been hidden beneath the surface? And suddenly, his entire wedding, his entire marriage, wasn't looking so perfect anymore. Rose, still standing there shell-shocked, finally snapped back into focus. Daniel, don't listen to him, she blurted, her voice bordering on hysteria now. He's just trying to cause a scene. I let out a quiet, amused chuckle. Oh no, Rose. You already did that all by yourself. Daniel took a slow, deliberate step forward, his expression shifting into something harder. Is that true? He asked. You said all that about your mom? Rose's lips parted, but no words came out, because how could she deny it? The moment stretched painfully long. The weight of her silence spoke louder than anything else. And in that single moment, Daniel realized the truth. His brand new wife was cut from the same cloth. The same lies. The same ability to smile to your face while tearing you apart behind your back. The same ruthlessness. His fingers twitched at his side, his breathing uneven. And suddenly, he was looking at his wife like he didn't even know her. How long have you been talking about my family behind my back? His wife froze. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her face going through 5 different emotions at once. Because she knew. She knew she had just lost everything. Rose, still desperately clinging to control, whipped toward me. Alex, stop ruining this wedding, she shrieked. But I just smirked. Me? Oh no, Rose. That was all you. The crowd was eating this up now. Guests were openly whispering. The bridesmaids were side-eyeing each other. Even Janet, who had just been in a fiery rage, was now too busy dealing with the aftermath of her own daughter's betrayal. But the one person who looked the most devastated? Daniel. Because it had finally sunk in. This wasn't just a bad night. This was the beginning of his marriage. And if this was how things started, how was it going to end? He turned toward me. You might have just saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. A hush fell over the ballroom. His words cut through the air like a blade, landing right at his wife's feet. She sucked in a sharp breath, her face draining of color. Because that wasn't something a husband said at his own wedding. I let out a slow, deep breath, glad to be of service. And with that, I turned, ready to leave this disaster behind me. But just as I reached the exit, Daniel spoke again. Hey, Alex. I stopped, turned back slightly, one eyebrow raised. Take me with you. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Even Rose's sister, his brand new wife, jerked in shock. What? She choked. Daniel's expression was dead serious. Take me with you, he repeated, stepping forward. I think I just realized I married into a nightmare. A long, painful silence followed. And then, a voice rang out from the back of the room. Yeah, bro, run while you still can. A burst of nervous laughter erupted from the crowd. Even I couldn't hide my smirk. Because, for the first time all night, I wasn't the only man waking up to reality. And damn, did it feel good. Janet snapped. 1 second, the ballroom was filled with tense, stunned silence. The next, Janet's rage erupted like a volcano. After everything I have done for you, she screeched, rounding on Rose with a look of pure betrayal. Guests flinched at the sharpness of her voice. Conversations died instantly. Even the servers, who had been carefully pretending not to listen, froze in place. Rose looked mortified, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. But there was nowhere to hide. I have sacrificed so much for you, Janet raged, marching closer. I defended you. I covered your debts. And this is how you talk about me behind my back. The anger in her voice wasn't just about tonight. This was years of control, years of manipulation, years of Janet believing she had raised the perfect, obedient daughter, only to find out Rose had secretly resented her all along. Rose, for the first time in her life, looked completely powerless. Mom, she started, her voice shaking. But Janet wasn't done. Not even close. You lied to me, she hissed. You lied. And after everything I did to make sure you had a good life? A new tension spread through the crowd. Guests exchanged glances, their whispers growing. People shifted uncomfortably. Even Harold, Rose's father, the man who had spent most of the night looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, rubbed his temples, as if deeply regretting every choice that had led him to this moment. And Rose? Rose looked like she was going to be sick. "Mom, please stop." But Janet wasn't stopping. She couldn't, because this wasn't just anger anymore. This was desperation. Janet wasn't just lashing out. She was realizing, too late, that she had never truly controlled Rose the way she thought she had. And now, in front of everyone, she was losing her grip entirely. "I gave you everything," Janet screamed. "And you were just waiting for the day you could get away from me." Rose's face crumbled, because that was exactly what she had been doing. And now? Now everyone knew it. The bride, Rose's sister, was staring at her in horror, like she was seeing her sibling for the first time. And Daniel, the groom, looked like he had just been punched in the gut, because now, he wasn't just seeing Rose for who she was. He was seeing his new wife in the same light. "How long have you been talking about my family like that?" he asked his wife, his voice low, cold. The bride flinched, because she knew she had been caught, too. Rose's lips trembled, but no words came out, because there was nothing she could say to fix this. I stood there, watching it all fall apart, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt zero sympathy. This wasn't just karma. This was poetic justice. I watched as Rose struggled to find her footing. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her lips parted, then closed again, because she wasn't just dealing with Janet anymore. She was dealing with the entire weight of the truth crashing down on her. She had spent years letting her mother tear me down. She had spent years letting me be the outcast in my own marriage. And now, she was the one who didn't belong. I turned slightly, ready to leave. But then, Janet's gaze snapped back to me. "And you?" she spat, her voice shaking with rage. I raised an eyebrow. "What about me, Janet?" I said, my voice calm. Her eyes blazed with fury. "This is your fault," she shrieked. "You ruined my family." A sharp gasp echoed through the room. Because now, Janet had fully lost it. Her true nature, the control, the manipulation, the anger, was on full display. And the guests? They were watching every second of it unfold. I let out a slow breath. "No, Janet," I said simply. "Your family ruined itself." Her face twisted. "You think you're better than us?" she hissed. I tilted my head slightly. "No," I said. "I just know when to walk away from a sinking ship." A sharp silence followed. Because that was it. That was the final blow. Janet stood there, shaking, her fists clenched. Rose was on the verge of breaking down. Daniel was looking at his new wife like he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The entire ballroom was tense, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. And me? I took a slow step back, my heart calm for the first time in years. "Enjoy the rest of your night, everyone," I said, my voice light, easy. Then, gripping my wedding gift tightly, I turned and walked straight out the door, because I wasn't part of this mess anymore. I never really had been. And now, they could all deal with the disaster they had created. Without me. The night air hit me like a breath of fresh sanity as I stepped outside the ballroom. The weight of it all, the noise, the humiliation, the endless cycle of being treated like I didn't belong, was gone the moment I walked through that door. But inside, chaos was still unraveling. I didn't even need to turn around to know that Janet was still fuming, that Rose was desperately trying to salvage what was left of her image, and that Daniel, the groom, was probably rethinking his entire marriage. And me? For the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. I should have kept walking. Should have left it all behind. Let them deal with the wreckage they had created. But then, the ballroom doors burst open behind me. "Alex," her voice. Tight. Desperate. I didn't turn around immediately. Instead, I let the silence stretch, let her feel it. That unfamiliar feeling of being the one left behind. Finally, I glanced over my shoulder. Rose stood in the doorway, breathing hard, her dress slightly rumpled from the tension of the night. Her eyes were wild, her expression torn between anger and panic. I raised an eyebrow. "You're still my husband," she said, her voice pleading now. "You're supposed to support me." I let out a slow, quiet chuckle. Not the kind that comes from amusement. The kind that comes from finally seeing everything clearly. I turned fully to face her, taking in the sight of the woman who had spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough, now standing in front of me, realizing she was the one who had lost everything. "Oh," I said, my voice steady. I thought I didn't count. The words landed like a bullet. Her entire face crumpled. Because she knew. She knew what she had done. She had spent years, making me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. She had let her mother degrade me, push me aside, treat me like I was less. And now, she was the one begging for me to stay. The irony was almost poetic. "Alex," she tried again, softer this time, reaching for me. "Please, can we just talk?" I stepped back before she could touch me. "Talk," I echoed. Her lips parted slightly, but she had nothing to say. Because there was nothing left to say, I shook my head. "No, Rose. We should have talked a long time ago." A flash of guilt crossed her face. And then, a new emotion crept in. Desperation turned to anger. Because she wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to not having control. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice sharper now. "You think this makes you look good?" Walking away, I just smiled. "No," I said, "but it makes me feel good." Her face twisted. Because that was something she couldn't argue with. For years, I had been the one chasing, the one compromising, the one trying to belong. But not anymore. And she was the one being left behind. I exhaled slowly, feeling the last remnants of my patience slip away. You don't get to treat me like I'm nothing for years and then act shocked when I finally decide I've had enough. She flinched. Because the truth hurt. "I was always on your side, Rose," I continued, voice calm but firm. "Even when your mother treated me like garbage. Even when you let her. Even when I felt like I was just there. I still chose you." Her eyes shone with something unspoken. Because she knew. She knew I had been patient. Had been loyal. Had tried. And she had thrown it all away. "Alex," I shook my head. "No, Rose." She fell silent. For the first time, I wasn't the one fighting for this marriage. "I hope this was worth it," I said finally. "All of it. The disrespect. The games. The need to put me in my place." Her breath hitched. "Because now, you get to see what it's like when I stop trying." I watched the realization hit her fully. The panic that replaced the arrogance. The fear that replaced the smugness. She had never thought this day would come. She had never thought I would leave. But now, she was watching me walk away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I took a slow step back. Then another. Her lips parted. She wanted to say something. Anything. But it was too late. I gave her one last look. Then I turned. And for the first time in years, I walked away without looking back. The next morning, my phone blew up. I knew it was coming. I expected it. But still, seeing Rose's name flood my screen, over and over, was almost pathetic. I didn't answer. I didn't even bother to read most of them. But the ones I did, they were exactly what I thought they'd be. "I can't believe you did that. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You're my husband, Alex. You're supposed to stand by me. Apologize, and maybe we can fix this." I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. Apologize? For what? For finally standing up for myself? For not sitting quietly while her family made a joke out of me? For walking away when I was done being treated like garbage? Yeah, not happening. I scrolled past her messages, deleting them without responding. Then I saw the voicemails from Janet. 7 of them. All different shades of furious. I played one out of pure curiosity. "Alex, you need to fix this. You humiliated Rose. You embarrassed our family. You should be ashamed of yourself. Call me back, now." I smirked and deleted it immediately. There wasn't a single part of me that felt bad. Not one. Because for once in my life, I had done what was right for me. And I wasn't looking back. But the best message? The one that actually made me pause. A text. From Daniel. The groom. The man who had watched his brand new marriage implode right alongside mine. "You might have just saved me from the biggest mistake of my life." I stared at the words for a long moment, then let out a slow exhale. Because I knew exactly what he meant. I wasn't the only one who had seen the truth last night. I wasn't the only one who had been playing a losing game. Daniel had looked at his new wife and seen his future flash before his eyes. A lifetime of feeling small. A lifetime of walking on eggshells. A lifetime of trying to be enough for someone who would never see him as an equal. And now he was rethinking everything. I tossed my phone onto the kitchen counter, leaning back in my chair. For the first time in 5 years, my entire world had shifted. And yet, I felt lighter. Like I had finally finally put down the weight I had been carrying for so long. The weight of trying. The weight of being married to someone who had never truly valued me. Rose could call. Janet could scream. The entire family could be furious. I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I chose myself. And it felt damn good.